Dear GAC Empow, in the last video, I asked you to spend a week with me, and thankfully, you said yes. Now, I had to wait a while, but now we're finally here, where I've always wanted to take you. Now, some say road trips are not just about the destination, but also the journey going there. Here on this twisty mountain road, we have no particular destination in mind, except for every kilometer of road ahead. This is actually a lot of fun. This particular road trip is all about the journey, to see what makes you special. And of course, since this is a review, we have to ask the question, are you worth the money? Well, let's find out. Cue the intro. To a car enthusiast, a car is not just a means of transportation. It's also something that you form a personal relationship with. My cars are like my second or third girlfriends. They get pampered, and even though they have temper tantrums, I try to stick by them. Within reason, of course. A car can have flaws, but if I like a car enough, those flaws become character points. Like in any relationship, what makes you stay are the good moments. Now, the Empow is not a perfect car. It does have its flaws. But during the 1 week that I spent with her, we had a lot of good moments, which I think outweigh the bad. Now, we'll talk more about that later. For now, let's do a walk around. The GAC Empow comes in 3 variants. This over here is the 1.5 GB. That's called Gabby. Now, Gabby over here looks a bit more conservative than the top-of-the-line GE that we saw at last year's International Motor Show. She comes in this more conservative-looking gray color. By the way, the matte fighter green color that we saw on the GE is exclusive to that variant. Unlike the GE, you also don't get the massive air vents over here, but you still get the same deep-set LED headlamps with these fang-like DRLs, which kind of remind me of Peugeot. By the way, GAC and Peugeot are handled by the same distributor here in the Philippines, Astara, just so you know. From the side, the Empow's proportions look more European than a lot of its competitors. Even though she is front-wheel drive, she has rear-wheel drive proportions. By that I mean the windshield is pushed further back, the hood looks longer and lower, so the fenders look better proportioned. If you compare it to the MG GT, which has a much higher hood line, the Empow looks less lifted, and even though both have 17-inch wheels, the Empow's wheels look bigger because there's less empty space above the wheel. By the way, only Gabby here comes with 17-inch wheels. The top-of-the-line GE comes with bigger 18s. She also has a fastback-like roofline and upswept lines on the side, which make the car look like it's moving, even though it's standing still. If you cover the badge here at the back, you could easily mistake the Empow for a Mercedes or some other German brand. She looks sporty, yet classy at the same time. She has this multi-tier design reminiscent of new BMWs, and these thin LED taillights give the car a very modern look. She also has this subtle lip on the trunk, which looks like a ducktail spoiler. Now, I'm not a fan of the fake exhaust tips on Gabby, but the GE variant comes with quad exhaust tips, which I think looks so much better. For a European car, you don't get a physical button on the trunk for opening it, but it does have sensors, so if you stand behind the car for a couple of seconds, it'll automatically open. This trunk keeps on opening. I find that it's useful when you're carrying groceries, but not so much when you're doing car reviews, as it kept on opening while I was pointing out stuff at the back. I think the feature can be turned off though in the menus. There's also a button on the key fob and on the dashboard for opening the trunk. Now, I don't have the exact volume of the trunk. It looks quite spacious, but the opening is quite small. So you have to be creative when putting in oddly shaped items. You can fold the second row seats though if you need more space. One of the selling points of the Empow is underneath the hood. So this over here is a 1.5 liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that puts out 170 horsepower. And according to GAC, that's good enough to propel the car from 0 to 100 kph in just 6.9 seconds. Now we're going to test that personally later. Now the first time I saw this engine bay, the first thing that I noticed was that thing over there. Apparently that is a liquid cooled intercooler. And I believe this is the first time that I'm seeing a liquid cooled intercooler at this price bracket. As you can see, you have coolant lines running towards the intercooler. So that basically cools the air before it's fed into the engine. Now cooler air is denser, so you're basically shoving more air into the engine for more power. Now that power is sent to the front wheels via a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. All variants of the Empow come with fully independent suspension at all 4 corners. 4-wheel disc brakes also come as standard on all variants. You have 3 color options for the interior of the Empow. So this one over here has this red and black color scheme, which I think looks better than the all-black interior of the previous unit that we checked out. There's also a yellow and black option. So almost the entire dashboard is covered in leather. This over here is covered in leather. This is also leather wrapped over here. Also this. This is hard plastic though. The seats are covered in leather with the same red and black color scheme. And to get this G lettering on the leather, the driver's seat is power adjustable. The passenger seat is manually adjustable. If I had to nitpick, I have just one complaint about the interior, and it's the steering wheel over here. So this is made of polyurethane. If you want a leather-wrapped steering wheel, you'll have to go for the top-of-the-line GE variant. Now, in fairness, this only bothered me for the first few days or so. After that, I got to appreciate how nice this feels in the hands. It has a nice girth to it, and it's also a good size. It's not too big, and you also got a flat bottom. So it feels really sporty. You can also adjust the weight of it and also the steering ratio through the settings. You also don't get paddle shifters on the GB. If you want paddle shifters, again, you'll have to go for the top-of-the-line variant. There's also no way of shifting manually in this car, not even through the shifter. At first, I thought this was a wireless phone charger. Apparently, it's not, but it's a good place to put your phone. Now, even my ginormous phone fits, and that's an S23 Ultra. You got these dual screens over here, which are next to each other. So it looks like you have one continuous wide screen in front of you. You got a 10.5-inch infotainment screen. It gets Apple CarPlay, but you don't get Android Auto, which is the same case for a lot of Chinese cars. You also get a reverse camera with active guidelines, and the resolution is pretty good. You get 5 different drive modes. You got Eco, Comfort, Sport, Sport Plus, and a configurable DIY mode. So Sport Plus is initially deactivated when you get the car from the factory. To activate it, you'll have to satisfy a list of conditions. In Sport Plus mode, you get these additional gauges. You get this turbo boost gauge, which should come in handy if you want to tune the car. You get an oil temperature gauge, air temperature gauge, a water temperature gauge, and an oil pressure gauge, which should come in handy if you want to ever take the car to the track. The different drive modes influence your throttle response, your transmission shifting, and also the weight and the ratio of the steering. Yeah, we'll talk more about that later. I like the layout of the instrument cluster. You have this large tachometer with these blades around it. The font is pretty big, so you can clearly see it without having to look down so much. I think the interior has a good balance of classy and sporty. You have these straight horizontal lines which give the car a more mature look, but it also wraps around you in a way that makes you feel like you're in a cockpit. You have this high center console over here, finished in this matte carbon fiber finish. You have this dual layer dashboard, and you have this very wide armrest on the side. So it really looks like it's wrapping around you. This also has an electronic parking brake with auto hold. You get a physical volume knob over here. Now, in terms of storage, the glove box is decently sized. You have plenty of storage underneath the center console, enough space to fit a bag. You also have two USB ports over there and one 12-volt outlet, which can be a bit of a pain to reach. Over here you have two cup holders and you have plenty of space underneath the armrest. And you also get a sunroof, but it's not panoramic. It's only for the people sitting at the front. Space here at the back is more than adequate. The front seat is adjusted to my height, and as you can see, I have plenty of legroom. That looks like 7 inches of legroom over there. Headroom is also quite decent, which is impressive considering the sloping roofline of the car. The seats are very comfortable. You have good thigh support. You also have good bolstering, so when you're on twisty roads, you don't slide around so much. Now, this seems to be a thing with a lot of Chinese cars nowadays. You only get one aircon vent here at the back. You also have one USB-A port over there, but unfortunately, you don't get a center armrest.
Now, Gabby over here is not much of a city person. I mean, car. You can use the car for city commuting, but in stop-and-go traffic, she can feel a bit jerky at first. The power band is very non-linear. You get very little torque under 1,200 RPM. You step on the gas, you get nothing. So you step a bit harder, and then you suddenly get more power. But over the week that I drove the car, I've learned to work around it. The key is to just lightly step on the throttle in stop-and-go traffic. Now, she does have full ADAS features like adaptive cruise control, which is a godsend in stop-and-go traffic.
Okay, turning adaptive cruise control on. Set it to 40 kph, 45, there we go. Also turning on lane keep assist. The GAC Empow comes with a full suite of advanced driver assist features like adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist. So currently I have adaptive cruise turned on right now, and as you can see, my feet are not doing anything. I also have lane keep assist turned on, so as you can see, it's automatically following the lines on the road.
Now, I'm a huge fan of adaptive cruise control. It's very helpful on long road trips, but also in heavy traffic along EDSA. If you're not used to it, it can be unnerving. But I've been using adaptive cruise on several cars now, so I'm quite used to it. Now, it's called driver assist and not autopilot because you're not supposed to completely rely on it. By that I mean you still have to have your attention on the road so you can intervene if ever necessary. But as you can see here, my inputs are very minimal to almost nothing, so it really helps reduce fatigue during stop-and-go traffic. Getting a car like the Empow and only driving her in city traffic is like getting a high-end gaming computer and only running MS Word. So I took her on a road trip on the twisty mountain roads of Rizal, a place where she could stretch her legs. In Sport Plus mode, she transforms into a different animal. The throttle response becomes a lot sharper, the steering gets heavier and sharper, and the transmission holds onto the gears a lot longer. She never lets the RPM go down, and I was hitting the red line even at half throttle. When you let her loose, she can give you a good boost of adrenaline.
Brakes. This is actually a lot of fun. Brakes. Steering is actually quite sharp. It doesn't feel like this when you're in eco mode. It feels a lot more numb.
Now, Gabby doesn't allow you to shift gears manually, but I find that at least on this mountain run in Sport Plus mode, she chooses the right gears anyway. She keeps the revs high and downshifts when she has to. Still, the paddle shifters of the GE would be greatly appreciated here. The suspension feels like it's more biased towards comfort, but body roll is quite acceptable. If this were my car though, my first mod would definitely be coilovers. I don't think the video captures it well, but the engine's induction noise has this very distinct and very audible whine. It's almost as if it has a supercharger.
And listen to the whine coming from the engine. It sounds like you have a supercharger. Is this a hairpin over here? Yeah, hairpin. Okay, there's a bit of 70.
Now throughout this mountain run, driving the car very aggressively in Sport Plus mode, I averaged 7 kpl, which I think is pretty good. In the city with moderate traffic, I got as high as 11 kpl and 9.5 kpl when the traffic got heavier. On the highway, I got 16.5. Now, one of the selling points of the car is its 6.9 second 0 to 100 time. Now, since this is a Jaywalker car review, we're not just going to put that number on the screen, we're actually going to test it out. I got 6.78 seconds. That's with the aircon off and with no other passengers in the car. Now 0 to 100 in 6.9 seconds or 6.8 seconds is no joke. That's faster than the previous generation BRZ and just a bit slower than the current gen. Despite the Empow having a bit less horsepower than the GD Coolray, it's almost a second quicker to 100. It's also quicker than the CX-5 Turbo, which has almost 100 more horsepower and has much better traction because it's all-wheel drive. Now I wondered, how could this be? The Empow almost has the same curb weight as the Coolray, and it's just 300 kilograms lighter than the CX-5 all-wheel drive. Now this is where it helps to have the additional gauges. At 5,500 RPM, the boost maxes out at 1.7 bar or 24 psi, and throughout the run, it never went below 1.4 bar. The gears are short enough that you're always in boost. So when you're driving it aggressively, it never drops below 4,000 RPM. The lag that I was talking about, that only happens when you're starting from zero or from a low speed. When you're at a decent speed and in Sport Plus mode, the engine and the transmission are always in attack mode, and there is no lull in between gear shifts. After a week, I sadly had to return Gabby. Now, like I said, every car has its flaws, and Gabby has quite a few. But in a relationship, what makes you want to stay are the good moments. And when I think back to that road trip to nowhere in particular, what I mostly remember are the good moments. The last time that I remember having that much fun in a front-wheel drive regular sedan was when I drove the Kia Forte GT. And the Type R, of course, but that's totally in a different class. The Empow is the quickest, arguably the best looking, and definitely the best equipped in her class. There was one thing though that kept bugging me. The top of the line GE is only 43,000 pesos more expensive. And for that money, you get bigger 18-inch wheels, quad exhaust, a sportier exterior, paddle shifters, and a leather-wrapped steering wheel. Gabby's biggest competition is actually her sister GE. And I think GE is actually the better buy.